Hey everyone, welcome back to Crafty and Curious. My name is Nicole, and today I'm going to be showing you how to do the double seed stitch, also known as the moss stitch. If you haven't checked out the first video in this series, go ahead and click up in the iCard up here or in the description below to check out our seed stitch tutorial. With that being said, let's head over to the work surface and start off with the double seed stitch. So now we've got our moss stitch, or what we call our double seed stitch, and if you take a look at this pattern, you'll see that it's very similar to the seed stitch, and you might even be able to see why we call it the double seed stitch sometimes. And that's simply because we're doing the exact same thing as what we did for the seed stitch, but we're basically duplicating our rows each time we do it. So again, you can see that this is a nice textured fabric that we've created. It's got the bumpiness that the seed stitch has, but maybe a little bit less intense. It's also a reversible pattern, and it lays nice and flat. So very, very similar to the seed stitch. Let's get into our demo of how to do the moss stitch / double seed stitch. The same rules will hold true for the double seed stitch as held true for the regular seed stitch, where you've got certain stitches that you have to do if you're doing an even number or an odd number of stitches cast on. This is an odd number. I've got 9 stitches here. So I'm going to do exactly what I did for the first row of the seed stitch, and I'm going to do knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, all the way across. First row done. Flip it over, we're going to do our second row. Now this is where double seed stitch differs from single seed stitch. So normally in an odd number of stitches, in seed stitch we would want to start with knit, then purl, etc., so that we get a V on top of a bump and a bump on top of a V. But in this double seed stitch, we want to elongate the pattern we've already created by one row. So what we're actually going to do is where we started with knit stitch before, we're going to now do a purl stitch. So we're going to be putting a bump on top of a bump and a V on top of a V all the way across this second row. So again, where we started with knit purl, now we're going to do purl knit. And this is actually extremely similar, it's actually exactly the same, as how we would start a 1x1 ribbing, which is our next stitch that we're going to get into. Let's stick with the double seed stitch for right now. So again, I'm just going purl knit all the way across row 2. Okay, flip it over, and we can see now that we've got a V on top of a V, and in between the V's we've got a bump and a bump. Now what we're going to do is what we would typically do with the seed stitch, and we're going to try and alternate that pattern. So now, since we've got V's along the edge and bumps for the second stitch in, we've got VV, we want to get bump bump for the third and fourth rows. So we're going to do a purl stitch, then a knit stitch, and a purl stitch, then a knit stitch. Okay? So we're going to start with a purl stitch here, and then a knit stitch, and then a purl stitch, and then a knit stitch. We're just going to do that all the way along the row. Very, very simple. Alternating those bumps and V's like we would for the seed stitch. Now we're on row 4, and for row 4 we want to keep that pattern going from our third row. So we've got V's, then bumps, V's, then bumps, right? V's, bumps, V's, bumps. So we want to keep doing that. So we're going to start with a knit stitch here. And that way we've got 2 rows that are the same. So we've got knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, and we're going to do this all the way across the row. And those 4 rows are what you're going to alternate to get this double seed stitch. Alright, so you can see it starting to emerge there, where we've got, again, here we've got a bump, and then we've got a knit V and a knit V. Okay? So that's all you're doing for the double seed stitch or the moss stitch. as it's also called, is you're just trying to get 2 bumps on top of one another, 2 V's on top of one another, 2 bumps, 2 V's, 2 bumps, 2 V's, all the way up the swatch. So you can see that in our larger swatch here. Right here, for example, we've got a V and a V, and then kind of in the shadows there, we've got a bump. Whoop, where are we here? Bump and a bump. All right. So that's basically all you're doing for your moss or your double seed stitch. And that's it. That's the double seed stitch, also known as the moss stitch. It's a nice versatile pattern that a lot of people really seem to like if they find that the seed stitch is a little too textured. With that being said, if you enjoyed this video, please don't hesitate to like and subscribe for future videos. Drop a comment down below if there's any video ideas you'd like me to look into next. You can also check out our socials at Crafty and Curious on Instagram and at Will-O-Wisp Knits on Ravelry, Instagram, and Etsy. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!